especially with the Red Cup coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, today I've got an amazing guest. Amazing guest, guys. We've got Opta Jabu in the house. Guys, do you know how much effort and time, we had to take to get this guy? My brother, I know you are a very, very busy guy. First of all, we as the TTB show, people or even the members that are here, Prawami, we appreciate the effort that you've done. I hear you're sitting in the office, for this particular interview. You did not even leave the office because you wanted us to do this interview. My brother, good evening, Skoko Sami.
Good evening, Makubu. Good evening, everyone in the TTB show. It's a pleasure to be here, my brother.
No, it's beautiful, bro. But thank you so much, my brother, for actually coming through for this interview, Skoko. Maybe let's start it first. In fact, people know you, or people know you as Opta Jabu. People that are listening to Metro FM, they always listen to you. We to Andile. But just break it down first. Who is you? Who is Opta Jabu? As in you.
Hey, Maku, thank you once again, my brother. So Opta Jabu is a team. It's a team of people. It's not just one person. I do a lot of the talking and on the radio and in a space like this, but it's a group of people who are soccer fans at heart. That's the most important thing, and who are passionate about numbers and data. And at the bottom, it's really to get better analysis of the game that we love. That's what Opta exists for. That's what Ladum Analytics exists for. It's just to help people get a better understanding of the game. So we started this, I'd say even like 10 years ago, my brother. 10 years ago, that's when we had these ideas in our separate spaces. And we registered some of these accounts that firstly were on Twitter, known as X now, and said, okay, we're going to do stats because this is the idea that we have. And along the way, in the last 10 years, we've met each other and combined and come into an understanding to say, okay, this is who Opta Jabu is, this is who Ladum Analytics is, and this is what we do, this is what we provide, this is who we provide it to, and now have refined the offering that is we've been working on over the years. So it's now clear that we're just a sports data company that helps media, clubs, betting companies, and agents to make sense of the game using numbers.
Sure, my brother. First of all, maybe I was puzzled. How do you guys pick up the data, and what do you guys do with the data? And maybe you can even break it down in terms of the people that you actually supply the data, because people are not aware, Prawami. Something that you have shared with me before of what you guys use, or what the data that you normally take. Who do you give it to, and possibly your clients, and how me as an individual, or let me say I own a club or anything, do I access this particular database? People, can you please share and show that you share the live so that more people can actually come and watch this? I know we just started at 9 and we jump into this. I know Abanya, they're still trying to log in and all the stuff. But yeah, Prawam, can you break it down for us in that regard?
Sure, Makul. So I think what I'd say is there's two types of data. There's two types that we work with. Maybe there's more out there. In fact, there is more out there, some that we don't work with. Firstly, there is match sheet data, which is basic historical data. Who played, who scored, what date did they play, what was the starting lineup, and so forth. So it's your basic, what you get on a match sheet that the PSL provides to media. It has everyone who's on the starting lineup, all the subs, who's the coach. And then with that comes the player ages, their nationalities, and so forth. That's one set of data, and that is historic data. Let's call that data set number one. So historic data is that. From 96, 97, it's all available. Very difficult to find. The reason we started 96, 97 is because if you're going to ask a question about 1989, it's very hard to find the data. We had to scrape the internet, find books and magazines, interview journalists that were writing articles in the 90s for us to make sure that the database is full for historic data. That's 96, 97 up to today. It's easier to find today. If a player plays, you get the starting lineup immediately. But if you go to 96, 97, it's a bit harder to do that. So credit to other journalists that were doing this before the age of the internet. You know, there are people like Mark Gleason, I would mention here, Nick Said, and many other journalists who were doing this way before social media. If you remember, we had a kickoff yearbook, Dala, if you still remember, that had stats just like this. It was a version of Opta, but now that there's digital media and social media and so forth, we can easily convert that to be what it is today. So that's the historic data. And then number two is event data. Event data is your passes, tackles, interceptions, and so forth that you get nowadays among conversations. Who created the most chances, who has the most assists, things like that, which exist in the last few years. They don't exist from too long ago because the internet wasn't that strong, technology wasn't that advanced. But now in the last 5 years or so, it's easier, number one, for matches to be broadcast. Now you get every match on the PSL is on TV. So it's easier for the companies who collect this data to work on the video feed. 10 years ago, you didn't have all the matches provided. So you couldn't get the companies with the technology to analyze the feed and then share who made the passes, who made the assists, and so forth. So you won't get too much reliable data from 10 years ago. But there are some instances, the way games that were televised, some were analyzed, some were not analyzed. So it's very unreliable. But I can tell you for now, for sure, that from COVID up to today, that's the last 5 years, almost every game is covered with passes, tackles, saves, and everything, you name it. So that's the second data set. And for that one, I mentioned there's companies that collect this data. They are licensed by the PSL to do that. And once they've collected it, companies like Opta, StatsBomb, Instat, they then sell it on to middlemen like us. We're just the middlemen who buy it and then make sense of it, visualize it, and then sell it off now to clubs, media agents, and everyone else who has a use for it.
And currently, what are your biggest clients, if you want to share?
So some don't like to be told, to be said out loud who they are. But I mean, you listen to us on Friday night, Metro FM, we're on that show. So that's one, I would say, client that we work with. There's some agents that we work with as well who, some private, some you will see them on our website very soon. We just need to get into an understanding that, hey, can we share that we are in contract together with the public? That's things that we just need to iron out before we say it loudly. We have worked with clubs as well, and sometimes with individual coaches at PSL clubs. 4 or 5 of the PSL clubs that are there, we've had relationships with, done reports for them, whether it's the coach himself or it's the entire club, whether it's for a full season or just for a quarter. So different levels of service provided depending on the agreements that are made. And then with media as well, sometimes they're not clients, but you see us on Newsroom 4-5, we work with them, we appear on that show. We work with, we've been on Soccer Zone as well. Some of our visuals have been on Soccer Zone, even though we haven't been there. But there's people like that. So some is just conversations. They're not paying clients, but it's something which in the future we hope we can streamline and have them as paying clients.
Just to add in fact, on the broadcasters, sometimes you will hear somebody on the TV, on the broadcast, he mentions something that has happened in the past or that has happened in the PSL. It's you guys that normally supplies that information to them so that they can be able to cover the entire match and have those kind of stats.
Yes, I almost forgot that one. Sometimes we work with some commentators as well who need stats for a game. Sometimes maybe they don't have time to do the research, or it's a short notice for them. A lot of the time, things change at the studio. At the SuperSport studio, someone is given a match at the last minute and they don't have time to look for it, so they come and ask for those stats, and we just quickly do something for them. So you get commentators who get 10 pages in terms of stats, and then they use that to say, hey, this is the first time this has happened. This is the first time this guy has scored his head. This team has created the most chances and so forth. So there's that as well. So broadcast falls under media. You're right, my brother. That's definitely one of them.
100%. Bro, people don't understand, Skokosap, how important is data into football. Because I think there's just this thing whenever you mention data, you mention stats, people say, this thing doesn't exist. This thing, somebody somewhere went and they did some things there, and this thing is not correct. But how important is data into modern football score?
Makubu, at the end of the day, if you say Pirates won 2-1 or Sundowns won 4-1 or whatever it is, I have to switch on the light, sorry. If you say Pirates won 4-1 or whatever, that's data. It's data at the end of the day. The result is data. So you can't argue with that. The team played, they scored 2 goals, and they definitely they won the match. So that's data. And then, but you want more than that. You want more than the result. You want to know what was the halftime score. You want to know who scored the goal, who assisted the goal, who created the chance. So if you look at the world as we know it now, you watch English football and German football, it's data everywhere. You watch La Liga and they have the graphs live when the game is happening, That's where the world is going. The thing with data is like technology. As technology improves, so must the game improve. It must improve with technology. So that's where all this data is coming from. It's from the fact that we just have better tools and better techniques to collect things that we couldn't collect in the past. So we must be able to take advantage of that. It's like if you ask someone for a GPS, for a directions from point A to point B, they can tell you with their head, you go there, you turn left, you turn right, and then you go 100 meters and then turn left. Or they can just get a GPS and put point A to point B and follow the GPS. So sports data is like the GPS, that we have tools now that can help us make life much easier. And so we have to take advantage of that. But I guess what's important when you mention that sometimes people say this stat is wrong, this stat is incorrect. It's important to know that there are different companies that collect data. And based on the definitions that they will have a different definition for a pass, for a tackle. So you look at one data provider that says this player had 100 passes. Another provider will say this player had 95 passes and 5 crosses. So it's important, firstly, to know who the data source is, what is their definitions, so you can know if they're right or they're wrong. That's one thing.
The other thing, Koskoko, for a player playing in the PSL, how important it is to get it data. Because for me, in my own understanding, when a player can come to you and say, can I have my data for last season? Basically, so that he knows where to improve. How important is that, Skoko-sam?
It's important because it's data is objective, Data is not subjective. If you had 100 passes, you had 100 passes. Of course,
it doesn't change, Opta. It doesn't change.
We can argue about definitions, whether it's 100 passes or 99 passes, but we just know you had a lot of passes and we can quantify it for you as a player. Then you go to a team and you negotiate a contract and they ask, how good is this guy? And then the one coach says, he's this good, he's good at this, he's good at that, based on their memory. At the end of the day, a coach, with all due respect, coaches are very, very skilled people, and the assistant coaches and the analysts. But at the end of the day, they are still human beings with a limited memory that won't remember that I know my player had 100 passes, 98 of them were successful in this game and the last game, and the tackles that he made in the last game, and in practice and in training. So those limitations, that's what data helps with, is to say, hey, do you remember the last game? No, I've forgotten the last game. Yeah, here you have the numbers that show you which this player played how, and if he's good or bad. So for a player, it's important for him to have objective analysis of their performance, which they can use then to measure themselves. Tomorrow, do I improve? Am I getting better? Am I getting worse? The thing is, you can have a player now. Remember who scores. Sometimes you get a player who has a bad game, but scores a goal. Yeah, and then gets man of the match and he thinks, he had a good game. But deep down, that player knows, I didn't have a good game. Or if he wants to be honest with himself, he has to look at the numbers and see, did I have a good game or did I have a bad game? Then you get a game Lapwe where he doesn't score, but he has a good game with the numbers. And so he goes back to that. Which game should he build on? Is it the one that he scored or the one where he didn't score? It's probably the one where he didn't score. So the number one purpose of data is for objectivity, and to have a standard that is undeniable that you can measure yourself against.
Sure, my brother, me and you, we were together in some sports event, in a PE. This is where me and you met, and again, my friends, what an incredible human being, friends, you are. But I don't know whether it was you, whether it was Usine Sipo that shared the history of how this thing of collecting data started.
I think it was Mali. It must be Sinesipo. Very, very smart guy. He knows much more.
You want to share a little bit, friends?
He's been, I mean, from our perspective, the collection of data started a long time ago. There were people even 50 years ago without technology that were still using pens and whatever to draw lines and say, short maps look like this player shot from here and he scored there. So there is that definitely. Only the difference is in the last few years, you don't have to use a pen. You don't have to have someone drawing everything. You can use now technology to get this data. Players have vests. Those vests that they wear that also collect GPS data and kilometers run and everything. So nowadays you have all these tools that can help you to do that. But in the past, it was a lot of manual notation and manual work and record keeping, handwritten things. It was very difficult in the past. The only difference is now it's much easier. If I can give an example, if you look at the event data that I talked about earlier, that for a game, you may get about 3,000 events happening per game. So one game, Sundowns playing TS Galaxy, 3,000 events happening. And all those events must be measured. For a full season, then that's 30 games for a team. You're looking at 90,000, 100,000 events for one team. 16 teams, that's 1.6 million events. And that's just event data that you have to analyze. And then on top of event data, there's a third set, which is tracking data. The one with the vests where they, which package manager and how many kilometers they have and so forth. That one is another layer of data that has much more thousand events per game. So it gets much more complicated. So how do you manage all that data? How do you pull that all together? How do you draw a graph? How do you draw a heat map? Is you need tools and softwares that then come in to work on the data and draw the graphs and the heat maps that make sense to a coach. Because at the end of the day, the coach has 3 days to prepare for the next game. You had coach where Sundowns complaining they only had 72 hours to prepare. How does he prepare for the next opposition? When does he watch videos of the opposition? But if he has data, he can look at reports, he can look at heat maps and see how the other players move so that they can make their decisions. So in short, the answer is it's just easier to do nowadays, but it still costs a lot of money now. Instead of costing time, it costs money.
100%. I think in that event that we're in, my brother, myself and you, Brendan Forey, talk about how Stellenbosch specifically they use it for scouting. For instance, they will tell you that if they are looking for a left back, as studies they have certain or they have data of what they want as an output from a left back. And when they plug it, right, they always look at those players that will have the same output as what they are looking for, right? And then when they send out a scout, they will send out a scout based on who is best that came out that has the same stats. So you might have a left back that is very good in the PSL, but you might find that it doesn't have the output that studies want, for instance, for their game model. I just want you to explain that part and exactly how that data is utilized to come to those decisions.
Yeah, I remember that one. I think what Brendan mentioned then was that they lost a defender and people asked how they lost a striker, ne?
The striker to Sundowns.
Yes.
And then they replaced the striker with a defender.
They replaced the striker with a defender because it was not a matter of just this guy scored 10 goals, so we need 10 goals to be scored again. The question was, how much value does this player provide to the team? How much overall value? His passes, the value of his passes, the direction of his passes, the threat of his passes creates X amount of expected goals or goals for the team. And even if we don't replace a striker, we can get a defender that does the same thing or brings the same value. So that's how they looked at it. And the thing with Stellenbosch is what Brendan has said, and he says it many times, is that all teams are different. You can't repeat what Stellenbosch is doing at Orlando Pirates, at TS Galaxy, or somewhere else. Every team is different. Because number one, every team has a different, like you say, game model or play model. They have a different philosophy. They have a different coach. They have different players with different strengths and weaknesses. So as a team, your goal is to stick to the philosophy that you have with the resources you have, players and data as well. And when you replace players or you're selling them on, then you must at least replace them with players that fit into that philosophy. So it doesn't matter, okay, this guy scored 20 goals at Congo or wherever it was. Does he fit into? No point bringing them in. So data is really a. Someone said it's an opinion. It's another person with an opinion that comes and says, here's something that you didn't see with your raw eyes. You have coaching experience, 20 years. That's fine. And this is what you add to the conversation. Data is another person, Umuntu, that comes in and says, hey, this is what I want to provide to this discussion that we're having. This is how I see it. And now, the data can be wrong, or the data can be misinterpreted or calculated in a way that doesn't support the conversation. So it's a matter of adding data as a layer to what is already going on at the club. You can bring data. If you bring data to a club that has no structures, it's not going to make a difference. The club must clearly know its philosophy. It must clearly know point A to point B, where are they going? Yeah, but you can, data is a tool at the end of the day, and you bring a knife to a man who's drunk, it's not going to help. He's going to go around killing people and doing the wrong things. But if you bring the tool to someone who is in need of the tool, knows how to use it, knows what they need to cut and make happen, then they can be able to do that. So it's very important as well, just to be clear that data is not an all-encompassing solution that just comes says, we have data, now we're going to win. No. There are many clubs who have data. Brendan said this as well. He said there are many clubs who have data, but it doesn't mean that they're going to win, because everyone has the same data at the end of the day.
100%.
Has the data that Sundowns has the data that Pirates has, but it's about how you use it in your position.
And how you interpret it as well, because I can give you the data and you read the numbers, but you don't know how you will interpret the numbers. And once you interpret the numbers, how do you go then in the field of play? What do you need to do to ensure that it talks to the numbers? So that one is also very important.
Exactly. Is the player receptive to those numbers? Is the player, how much information can he capture and keep in his head before going onto the field of play and using his own natural instincts? So there's all that as well to consider. But because, data is a cool thing now, people think it just comes in and works. It's a very difficult process that must fit into existing structures. Otherwise, it's going to do more harm than good if they're not existing structures already.
And Usnesipo always says this, my brother. Football is not a game of opinion; it's a game of facts. and data actually is the fact. And another thing when I Opta is, people think when the data comes out and it says you had 2 forward passes, it looks like somebody went and cornered it. It's what actually happened in the game. It's the events of the game.
Yeah, hey, it is always interesting. It's always funny, man, watching the timeline when these numbers come out. Because, like I said, there's 3,000 events that happen in a game. Yeah? And when Opta comes says, hey, this guy, here are 5 things that he did: passes, duels, tackles, one, and everything. Okay, that's one thing. It's like, okay, wow, that's good. And I'm not denigrating or speaking down on data here. It's just one thing, that 5 things that came out of the whole event. There's also a question of what did he not do? This guy, you're saying, made 10 passes. Okay, what about the passes that he didn't make? You also need to measure. There were times when another player was open and he didn't make that pass. Is that a failure or is that a success? But because it's not measured, that the passes that were not made, then we can't really be objective and say, okay, this data has covered everything. So it's important as well to just to tone down a bit on the data, but it's still the most objective thing that you can find. It's at the level that we're at now, and the price that this data costs. That's the least you can do, is have the basic level of data, at least to know if your team is going forward or going backwards.
100%. Prawami, there's something interesting when you look at any data that you provide. That's why XG. That confuses a lot of people. I want you to explain it in a very simple term That thing that is called XG, you will see in the Premier League, and it will say Orlando Pirates. I'm just making an example. Orlando Pirates has the highest XG than any other team in the PSL, followed maybe by Sundowns or followed by then Chiefs. Exactly, would you explain in simple terms from a guy on Azilu to what exactly is an XG?
Okay, so XG, the name is expected goals, and it's a measure or a value that is put on every shot that is taken by a team in a game. Okay, that's the definition. And then what you hear sometimes is your commentator saying, oh no, he should have scored that. 9 times out of 10, he scores that. And what XG does is it actually goes back to look, is that true that 9 times out of 10, he could have scored that? Because sometimes we think it's 9 out of 10 when it's actually 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10. So that's what XG does. It tells you a shot that was taken, what is the chance or the probability of that shot becoming a goal? And if you look at a penalty, for example, a penalty, 75% of penalties are scored in football, in football history. For every 10 penalties, 7 or 8 are scored. In the PSL this season, I think we are at 24 penalties taken and 16 scored. So 8 have been missed. So that's about 68%, 70%. So you're just behind the normal value. But what that means is that if you have a penalty opportunity, your probability of scoring is 7 out of 10. So if you have 10 penalties, you probably score 7 and you miss 3, 2 or 3. That's the average. So what we will say is a penalty shot is worth 75% or 0.75 of a goal. So if you get a penalty, we say you created or you got a chance that gives you 0.75 of a goal. And that's based on many factors. The distance of the ball to the goal, where the goalkeeper is, that the defenders are here and everything. That's the whole man. So for every other shot, whether it's not a penalty, it's just a cutback and you're supposed to shoot from the 18-yard or the 12-yard area, every shot has a value. Some are 0.1, 0.7. But in general, the closer you are to the goal, you're looking at 0.5, 0.6 XG. And if you're outside the box, you're looking at 0.1, 0.2 XG. So it's 10% chance of going in and 20% chance of going in. And then what we do is we now put all these numbers together and say, your XG in a game, you had 10 shots in a game. Let me ask you again, when I'm a cool, if a team has 10 shots, one team has 10 shots, another team has 5 shots. Which team was more threatening?
Okay, logically in football, you say it's the 10.
You'll say it's the 10, dang it. But if I give you more information and say the team with 10 shots, all those 10 shots were outside the 18-yard. Exactly. The team with 5 shots, all those 5 shots were inside the 18-yard box. Which team is more threatening now?
Then obviously, now you give more information. Now I understand.
Yeah, but now you have more information. Now you understand. You're like, the team with 5 shots. Because now we've put a value and a context around the shots. So that's what XG does. It just puts a value and a context around every shot. So we stop looking at halftime and say, this team had 10 shots, so they dominated. This one had 5 shots, they didn't dominate. But what kind of shots were they? Were they shots out of desperation? Hey, and PSL, they love shooting from halfway line and so forth. It's like, why are you shooting from there? The PSL shot conversion rate at the moment this season is, I think it's 10% on average. 10%. So 1 in every 10 shots in the PSL is a goal. But at Sundowns, that's why you now look at Sundowns, the conversion rate at Sundowns is 25%.
What?
You see? So that's why Sundowns ends up with so many goals scored, winning so many games, because their shot conversion rate is high. They take shots in more dangerous positions. Sundowns is so low for shots taken, especially this season. If I'm not mistaken, my brother, they should be number 11 or 12 for volume of shots, number of shots taken is Sundowns. But they're top of the table. They are 6 points ahead. They've scored the most goals. If you look at where are those shots being taken, all those shots are coming from inside the box. Many of them are coming from inside the box. You look at Costa on the weekend, 4 shots taken, 3 on target, 2 goals scored. That's how Sundowns operates. They don't win. Efficiency. That's that. So XG is a measure of efficiency. That's what it is. What's the value of a shot being taken? And then what it's used for is if a player has 7.5 XG, that he has based on the shots that he's taken, they're worth 7.5 XG. You expect him to score 7 or 8 goals. So then we can see if a player has 7.5 XG, but they've scored 2 goals, then we say that's a problem because it's a player who's had many chances, many good chances, but has scored 2 goals.
Yeah.
And if a player has 7.5 XG, but has got 12 goals, someone like Costa is like that, then you see that this is a very good striker who gets 7.5 worth of goals, but comes up to 12 goals. So he adds 5 goals to the chances he receives. On top of the chances he receives, that's the value that he adds to the team. That's where Stellenbosch can now go to the market and say, we need someone who adds 5 goals to the 7 XG that we are creating as a team. And that way, we'll be able to continue being efficient that way. So that's what XG is, my brother. It's just a value of a shot. But it also has weaknesses. It's not a perfect thing. It has weaknesses because it only measures shots, XG. The player goes through, I think it was Pule Modi in the derby, you remember, in the Soweto derby.
Hey, don't tell me about that one.
But he went through and China made a good save in the end. And Modi didn't shoot. So what's the value of that? XG gives 0. You see? And then as a team, someone will say, because your XG is low, you didn't create anything. No, we created something. It's just that the player didn't take a shot in the end. That's why it wasn't measured by XG. So some of the weaknesses of XG is that it doesn't measure non-shot events. If something is not a shot, it won't measure it. If you put a through pass and the player misses it, like was it Saile yesterday or the day before, he missed the whole ball. That's 0 XG, but he had a chance, which we can't measure, of course, because the numbers don't say.
No, I hear you, bro.
No offense, Saile, sorry.
No. I saw as well in the comments somebody talking about Saile. Actually, when now you talk about Saile, it was even in the comment they were saying about it. But in terms of market value of a player, how does data influence in terms of the price of the particular player, for instance, and in what normally transfer market will have? What contribution does data have on that value of that particular player?
Sure. Again, it's with player transfers. There's the buying team and there's the selling team. So what the buying team values the player at may be different to what the selling team values the player at. That's why teams end up having a negotiation to say, I want to pay 10 million for this player. Another team says, no, this player is worth 20 million. Then how do you end up at a figure? Is then you get agents that represent players. So I said earlier that we work with agents as well. Agents come and they say, okay, please compare my player with other players in his position. And then we can say, no, this player has done so much. He's ranked here for shots, for assists, for threats, for everything. Things that are not even provided by the raw data. We can put that together and say, this is what the player brings. So what data helps with is, again, being objective in valuing a player. Because you must say, my player has brought so much for our team. He's added X amount of goals or points for this team. This is how much he's worth. And you want to buy him for 2 million. That's not going to work. He's coming to your team. He's going to add 10 points to your team. How much is 10 points worth to you as a team? How much is the prize money that you get? How much is the sponsorships that you're going to get? And you put that all together. Why are you setting up this enterprise? That's a football club. That's going to make 100 million rand, let's say, in a season. And my player, when he comes, is going to add another 10% to that. By just having him, the goals are coming, and he's going to add 10%, you're going to get 110 million rand. But you want to buy him for 1 million, that's not going to work. So it's just a tool of objectivity to say, let's be on the same page. How does this thing help me? It's like you, Makubu, you go to the shops, you want to buy a car, Mhlambi, you want to buy a car, and then you get a sheet with details. How old is this car? What is the dashboard? You look at the dashboard, it tells you this is the kilometers it has run, this is the speed that it goes at, here's the service history and everything. That's all data, so that you as the buyer know that this car performs like this, and this is how much I'm willing to pay for it, because it's based on data and information that actually values you or values that item that is being bought objectively.
100%. Opta, I want to get closer, Manje, to the interesting part where Uzoskaya mustard, but there's always these names that are being thrown around. Is there any difference between statistics and data? And would you want to share the difference between the two? Because we always jumble the word around Would you want to clarify that, Opta Jabu, today for everybody, the difference, if there is any, between the two?
The difference between statistics and data. What I'll say, my brother, is I don't know. What I'll say is for us, what we do is because there's Opta Jabu on it, and then it's Ladum Analytics. The reason we have those two different entities or groups of people is because they do different things. I would say Opta is more into stats and statistics, historical statistics,
and then analytics is more into
data and analytics, which is broader and it's the big picture. So also with statistics, you have to look at different types of statistics. There is descriptive statistics, there is prescriptive statistics, and everything. Now you get into subcategories that then you look, how do you say one thing is different from another? It's very difficult to say. I see someone here commenting about the PSL awards. Hey, these things. It was interesting last week watching the debate about Mofokeng versus Costa.
I remember.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting rest of the season. But yeah, there's differences, my brother, between data and statistics, and we try and keep the two different that way, separate that way. One is deeper than the other.
Yeah, basically we can say statistics is Opta Jabu, like Sokala Duma, or analytics is Sokala analytics is data.
So for us, I think that's what we can say. But at the end of the day, what the true definition says is data is everything. The raw information is data. 100%. And stats is now where you now have summaries and pie charts and everything that now give you context. That's that. But for our pages, for us, stats is Opta. It's a totally different thing. It's more storytelling using stats.
Tell me, my brother, men of the matches, do they ever say Opta Jabu gives us certain things we want to identify in that match, who needs to win the man of the match? Because that's another conversation in the PSL where a game finishes, you ask yourself, how did that player get the man of the match?
Shout out Gustavo there, who says stats are summarized, data is raw. That's the actual definition for data scientists. Maybe Gustavo, I think Shaba is telling
he is actually. He's one of the analysts. He's going to come up.
These are people you must respect. These are people who know the differences. We can't provide them here. They know everything.
No, in the TTB show, my brother, you must be careful of what you say, because the people that are here, he's the challenge.
Yeah, so Utiara stats to summarize data is raw, which is that I think I mentioned that towards the end. But for us at LA, we just keep the two separate like that. You're asking about men of the match, my brother. What was the question, please?
I was asking, do they ever consult you to give them data to make that decision? Because that's another controversial thing, as well as awards as well. Do they say, provide us with information so that we can make a better decision in terms of who wins man of the match or any awards in the PSL?
You know what? Let me not. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves at what we do now. What we learned actually when building this is, is to respect those that are there in authority and positions of power. So the source of data that we have, we also buy data. Remember the second data I talked.
You did mention, yes.
We buy it from Stats Perform Opta. This is public knowledge, and even at Supersport, the guys at Supersport at the studio, they also buy data from the same provider of data. So we have the same stats. The other day, when there was a comparison before Pirates played Sundowns, there was a comparison of, again, Costa and Mofokeng, and the Supersport page shared some stats.
I remember. And they did not mention the goals.
Yes, and then that moment I was asked to open the account and check comments, notifications. It was all people saying, is this true? Is this true? Sometimes people saying, this is wrong. Ask Opta. Opta has the right one.
100%. We trust you, brother. When we want anything, we know who to go to.
But we have the same. It's the same number that we have. We are going to the same source, which is Stats Perform. that provides that data. So for most of those answers to us, yes, it's correct. What's different is how you use the data. Interpretation. There's 3,000 events that happen in a game. Which ones are you going to focus on? That's that. So what is the purpose of you doing the data? Is it to drive a narrative? Is it to create content? You can use it whichever way you want. So the guys at SuperSport, they have data, they use that as well. So we can't then come and say, hey, we have data, use it. They also have the same data. So that's why we haven't crossed the line to judging man of the match and all that. And we don't know what the criteria that is used. It's important to know the criteria. What we've done in the past is in Mhlambe, we've had someone who is on a panel judging a position, whether it's defender of the season or striker of the season. One of our people that we work with ends up on a panel judging that. And then he comes and says, can I have data to help me make my opinion at the table about this position that we're judging? So that has happened in the past. But the good thing would be if everyone used, I don't know if they used it. We can't speak for other people. But if they do, then it's a good thing. But once again, you're into that question of subjectivity. How do you interpret this? Is a player with a 90% pass rate, is that a good thing if he's a defender? Is he passing backwards or forward? Those are things now you have to ask as well and have different, you still have different opinions, even if you have data.
Later office I ask Super because whenever there's no movement, they just switch off.
Yeah, you know how
I want to get to this interesting one, my brother. Now I want to go to the PSL. I want you to share the first three type of stats. I want the players with the highest data, right, that you have, and you can pick up any if you do in the PSL, the best players in terms of data. And then I also want to look at the teams in the PSL that have the highest data in terms of whether it's chances created, whether it's more tackles than the other. And then I want you to share interesting data, whether it's in the PSL, whether it's the Nedbank Cup that is coming up, my brother. Those are the three type of stats. I don't know if you have. I know we did not prepare this, but I know I'm just shooting you here. Any data that you want to share, especially in terms of the players?
I think for players, we can start with one of the players that has been playing very well, man, in the numbers and the stats is Keletso Makalo at Sikukune. He's been doing very well. Basic numbers. You talk about chances created is up there. You talk about big chances created is up there. You talk about expected threat. This is a new one that we calculated in the last season, is expected threat.
Wow.
Almost like expected goals, but expected threat is, a player has passes. We measure every pass and put a value, how much does that pass contribute towards a shot that is taken by the team. If you remember earlier, we talked about that different teams have different XGs, different shots have different values. And so some shots have 0.3 XG, some shots have 0.7 XG. And then we measure, if a shot has 0.7 XG, we then look at the chain of passes that led to that shot and the players that were involved in creating that shot. And you can value every action that led up to that shot, whether it's 10 passes before or it's 30 passes leading up to that. Every player that was involved gets a figure. Now he gets 0.1, 0.2, 0.05. You contributed to a shot in the end that was 0.7. And we can measure that for all 20 shots in the game, measure that for all 200 shots in 10 games, and measure that for all 500 shots the team takes in a season. And then for every player, they'll have a value that says you added so much value to your team's shooting opportunities. That's what is called expected threat. It's they call it a possession value model. So you have to value possession. Remember, we're talking about those, when I asked you that question of which team is more threatening, 10 passes or 10 shots or 5 shots. Now we ask which player was more dangerous, the one with 50 passes or the one with 100 passes. And again, immediately you're like, okay, the context now matters. Where were those 100 passes going? Where were those 50 passes going? So now we add value to the passes, not to the shots, but a value to the passes. And then divide that per game, and what you'll get is Kelezo Mahalo, again, top of the range, expected threat per game. He's up there, producing almost 1.2 value towards a goal that he produces in the passes that he puts through for the shots that are taken. So he's one of the best players in that so far. Who else? I mean, Costa is also a good player. He's a good player. His goals, assists, and whatnot, you have them. But more importantly, efficiency. Right? And like you say, 3 shots that day, 4 shots, 2 scored. Those are goals which are very difficult to score. I think at the end, Sundowns had an XG of 1.2, but that became 4 goals. So he was taking shots that were 0.1 XG, 0.15 XG. And still scored and converting them into goals. So that's what is known now as, they call it expected goals on target. So you have an expected goal where the shot is taken from, but then you have XGOT, which is where the shot ends, and it's the destination of the shot. So then we look at, you had a 0.1 XG shot, but you took it where you remember his shots that he took on Saturday to the bottom corner, right? People are saying, China does a bad save and whatnot. No keeper is stopping that. Even Williams himself isn't stopping that because it's put in the bottom corner. And in the bottom corner, shots that are there have values of like 0.8 XG, 0.6, 0.9 XG. So what XG on target does is it subtracts. You got a 0.1 XG chance, you converted it into a 0.9 XG on target chance. So you added 8 XG to that goal. You are very clinical. Kun Aguero, if you remember him, that's what he was very good at. Half chance is a goal. And then you get a player who gets a 0.5 XG shot from location, and then he puts it straight into the hands of the keeper. And then what we say is he got a 0.5 XG shot and turned it into a 0.2 destination XG shot. So he subtracted minus 0.3 from that. So he's an inefficient striker. He's not the shot.
But that one now is going to measure efficiency to the T.
Measure efficiency to the T. That's where Costa is. He's that type of player who scores a lot of goals. But again, Mofokeng also appears, if you say top 3, he's also there, man. For a young man to spearhead the Pirates attack. He most chances created at Pirates, most passes into the opposition box, into the final third, and so forth. He's up there. They're very good players. They're all doing very well. We're not here to compare. to compare.
No, we're not comparing. We're just telling them what it is.
We'll get into another discussion. But again, these are players playing in different positions, being asked to do different things for their teams. It's very hard to measure, to compare them directly with each other. Maybe at the end of the season, then we'll look back and say, this is what this guy has done, this is what this guy has done. So that's players. That's that. I can also mention Klambe shout out to the TS Galaxy goalkeeper.
Yeah, actually.
The Ivorian goalkeeper.
I've seen his numbers, eh? They are crazy.
We're looking at this past game with Sundowns. So he faced 4 shots on target, and he saved all of them, 4 saves. So that gives him 100% save rate for the shots on target that he faced. And that is, I think, it's the first keeper to have 100% shot on target saved in a game against Sundowns this season. Wow. So that was a good performance from him. That's another underrated player. Man, there's a lot of players. There's Mabuya, I think it's at Richards Bay. There's
shout out. He was here, by the way, about 2 weeks ago as well for an interview. Yeah.
Those are one of the very, very positive players who don't, because they're not the big clubs, they don't get as much shine and much focus on them.
But the numbers are saying something else.
Olo, Kwaiba, Chipa United. So then, man, again, if you had given me more time, would have this chat.
Don't stress. I know. Now let's go to teams. Do you have anything from teams in terms of any interesting stats? I know Umahalo, while you're still looking. Umahalo currently, I'm just looking on another source of data. On chances created, he has 46 this season. And the next that follows him is Urele, that is 38.
Okay.
On big chances created, Umahalo has 12.
Uh-huh.
And the next player is Wanama from Amazulu, who has 9. That
There you
is
go.
very, 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 very interesting in this regard. I don't know if you want to go player or let's go to the interesting stats.
All right, let's go to the teams, my brother. Let's go to the teams.
Teams, yeah.
I think TS Galaxy has been interesting the whole season. At first, we thought it was an anomaly, but in terms of what have we done here? We need to summarize for the season. In terms of box touches, against Sundowns, they had 25% possession, very low possession, but it was a function for that game. They had to do that for that game against Sundowns. But otherwise, touches in the opposition box, TS Galaxy are number 1 in the league when it comes to that number. Again, you ask and say, does that matter? What not? But it shows you that when they want to attack, they can do it. It's been like this consistent since the beginning of the season when they still had Dramovic in charge. So they have is at 400. It says here 402 touches in the box. The only team above 400. Second is Pirates, third is Chiefs, fourth is Sundowns. So you can see that they are punching above their weight a bit there.
100%.
So that's TS Galaxy when it comes to that. And then big chances created. Amazulu is first for big chances.
Strange, I'm looking at it, eh?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it as well. I'm like, Amazulu are up there in yo.
As a team. And what's happened in Amazulu is, but they've been unlucky as well, you know. We talked about hitting the woodwork. I think they are number 1 in the league as well. I'm just going to open that here. Amazulu hitting the woodwork this season 12 times. So that is worst, more than any other team. The next best is 6 times. The next worst is 7 times. That's Chiefs. So that is Amazulu. Unlucky. Many touches in the box, big chances created, but they're hitting the post a lot. And unfortunately, with these stats for soccer, hitting the post is a shot off target. Unfortunately, they don't get it to be counted as a shot on target, but it shows you just how unfortunate they've been. And then we get obviously Sundowns number 1 for touches and passes. That one is not a surprise. So I guess those are 2 teams, man, that I thought were interesting this season. And Chiefs as well, man. Chiefs is always, obviously, everyone is always talking about Chiefs. But
Yes, the numbers are actually Opta Jabu, numbers for Chiefs are crazy.
Chiefs are
They
not.
are very, very crazy. Yet people are saying Chiefs is, they don't talk about them when we talk about, but the numbers are crazy. What's a fun, interesting Opta is the corners that
Yeah.
Chiefs have taken.
Yeah.
They have the highest corners than any other club. And if you look as well as the goals, I don't have the stats for the goals, but based on observation of my eye, I think they are the most club that have scored goals on set pieces usually, which I find very, very interesting. I think Chiefs have improved a lot into that aspect. Opta, any other stats, Opta, besides the teams? I know you always dish out the stats. I don't know when you dish it out, they are clients. They are clients.
So I think tomorrow is Valentine's Day, my brother.
Sure.
Yeah, well, some of us were married. You see, we're already ready, my brother. This is a funny stat that always pops up on Valentine's Day. Lerato Chabang scored. He's the only player to score more than once on Valentine's Day. That's an old stat, obviously. But his first name was Bani Lerato, and which means love. And his nickname, was All You Need Is Love. But he's the only player to score more than once in a league game on Valentine's Day. That's one.
That's interesting.
Someone was asking us about goalkeepers, how many goals they've scored. Maybe we can ask some of the questions that are here. How many goals? Which are the top scoring goalkeepers? Kennedy Mwene is number 1. He scored 11 goals, 11 league goals as a goalkeeper. So he's number 1 more than any other keeper. Other guys scored 1 or 2. Even Onyango has a goal and so forth. So that's some of the interesting stats as well. I particularly like as well Cirino this season, the one we're looking at. Again, we're just digging in. Cirino. So, I mean, we can talk about chances created, right? And this guy has 43, this guy is 57. But a lot of guys, some players have many chances created because they play more minutes, right?
100%.
They have more opportunities to do that. So if we convert that stat and put another column and say, okay, chances created, and then we have minutes played, and then we divide that. Then we now have a chance per minute played, or let me say rather minutes taken to create a chance. So that's where now you look at, you're converting everything, and then the people that are on top suddenly are now fourth or fifth, there's someone else who's on top. And Sereno, when you do that, I think it said he creates a chance every 20 minutes.
What?
Every 20 minutes that he plays. He hasn't played that much. So he's played maybe, I don't know, whatever minutes he's played, but
he creates more chances in the small minutes that he might have played.
Yes. But 20 minutes for every chance that he creates. And then your top players, your Makalwa, Mufukeng, and so forth, they take about 35 minutes to create a chance. So in a game, on average game, they're going to give you 3 chances. Sereno will give you 4, maybe 4.5. So that's one as well, which recently stood out in terms of Gaston Sereno and what he brings to the team. But yeah, like you said, Chiefs, I mean, if I were a Chiefs fan, I would not be worried at all, man. I would just enjoy the season. It's the coach's first season, and it's decent. It's fine. The underlying numbers are good. Some of the will charge at the end of the season, man. You can't keep changing coach for a big club like Chiefs. Some of the guys on the team support Chiefs, so our team is multi-team support. There's Pirates, there's Chiefs, there's whatnot. So we have some of these discussions, but the overall feeling is just trust the process. Trust the process. Give it a season, and then you can judge after that. What do? You get another coach, comes in, starts again from scratch, and then another one comes in. You'll be changing coaches every season. At some point, you must just hold on to a guy for a year or 2, or 3 even, like Pirates have done, and see what that brings.
Why do I have a feeling that you are supporting a certain team from Soweto?
No.
I'm not saying I know.
No. Your feelings need to be checked.
Opta, can I give you an assignment, my brother, that I'm asking you together? Can you, if you can, find out in the PSL how much minutes does actually a 90 minutes game the ball is in the field of play?
I got you. All right.
The reason why I'm asking this is because there's a player that went overseas for trials. I'm not going to mention names. And one of the reports that came was that the PSL is lower in terms of the amount of game in 90 minutes that's played. Most of the time, the ball is in out, is in the throw-in, is doing that. And then in the 90 minutes that you pay for, you might find that you are only watching 50 minutes. I don't know how you're going to get it, my brother, but I wish you could get that. You could get that. In fact, in closing, is there anything that you want to say, Koko-sam, in closing?
Not much, my brother. Thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, our new website is coming up soon, so all the services that are provided will be listed there, and if anyone needs them, they can just go there and check. Media, clubs, betting companies, agents as well. There'll be a list of what to do, how much it costs, and everything. So that's one thing to look out for. We have a newsletter as well. If people want to subscribe, every week it writes stories about data. We're looking at where do teams send their goal kicks. We're looking at things like that. We're looking at shot quality, how good are teams when it comes to their shots. And also the other day we're looking at the most valuable ball progressors, talking about expected threat as well. So every week we write an email that comes to your inbox with stats on the PSL that are not, most of the time, not on TV or on radio, and we subscribe to that. That's how we communicate. Soon we'll also have a TikTok. It's there, but it's a small account, small amount of followers, but we're working on something. They can follow that as well. I guess this is the part where you say, follow us, support us.
Yeah, I know. Opta Jabu, your socials, man. I know you are big on Twitter. Me and you, we always sit on Twitter and we argue with almost everybody.
When there's time, my brother. The thing is, this is not, everyone on the team, they are working, people have jobs. This is an extra thing as well that was done. So sometimes only get to post in the evening or between 5 and 6, schedule some posts. But if people can support, that would be great, man. At the end of the day, we're all fans trying to bring a new level of analysis. We're blessed to have what we have, the product that we have, the platforms that we have to share it. There are people from other countries who look at our pages, and not just Opta, our media in general, and say, wow, We need stats for our league. We need content for our league. We need TTB show for Ghana and everything. Because they don't have things like that. So we shouldn't take things for granted. We're very blessed, my brother, to have what we have. So let's keep it up. And also, you guys are doing great work, man.
No, thank you so much. But on socials, you are big on Twitter, ne? Can you mention your socials?
Yeah, and Facebook, Opta Jabu, Facebook, Ladum Analytics, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just check those two on all the platforms as well. You'll find us there.
I don't know whether you want to answer the last one.
Who is the favorite to win footballer of the season according to data? Yo, it's a difficult question, my brother Toro. I'm
sure it's between 3 players, though.
Do you include the keepers as well?
Okay. Included. I'm just talking from the top of my mind.
The defenders as well. But I mean, from most of the numbers that people look at, it will be, and the way the conversation has gone, Costa, Ribeiro, Mahalo. I'll put those 3 that I mentioned, maybe.
That's what I mentioned, the 3, yes. From a defender, who's the best?
The better performing defenders this season. You're looking at... Yo, that's a tough question, man. So data is very weak when it comes to analyzing defenders. So it's hard to say in that front. But I guess the Pirates' defense as a whole has been a very solid unit, at least until the beginning of this year. So maybe from there you might get someone, because they've improved in terms of XG considered. They are the best. It should be on like 7 or 7.5 XG considered halfway through the season, which means they've only worth to concede 7.5 goals. So they've been a very good defense. Maybe you'll get something from there. Midfield, Makalwa, forward, Ribeiro and Mufokeng. Yes, together like this, not separated, together like this.
Yeah. No, we're mentioning all of them. My brother, we really appreciate you. We thank you so much as the TDB show. Amachitala Pamfet, we've got about maybe 10 to 15 analysts. In the comments as well. There are a couple. Gustavo is one of them as well. Gustavo actually is the guy that manages the entire YouTube page for YouTube channel for our Lokuzan. For our show. In fact, we appreciate you. We thank you so much for making an hour. I thought it was going to just be 30 minutes or 45, but the conversation is interesting. We are going over that. We appreciate you are sitting in the office and not going home. We don't take these things for granted, my brother. And thank you so much for being the man that you are. And thank you for everything. Where I get an advantage, where I get stats, you know.
Thank you, my brother.
No, we appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much, man.
All right.
Cool, thank you. Boom! Guys, thank you so much for